Good morning, good evening, and keep it tight. Welcome to Liquidmatrix Security Digest Hacker Radio Podcast Episode 0x7A.
Good morning, good evening, and keep it tight. Welcome back to Liquidmatrix Security Digest Hacker Radio Podcast Episode 0x7A. We're back. Well,
Sort of a deja vu.
There was a failed recording completed on June 21st. The episode was re-recorded June 24th. Jamie is not so good at getting the editing done and shipped this week.
We're back. A couple of us at least, connect four. No, we're down to two. Here with me this week are myself, Dave Lewis, and James Arlen on the Wheels of Steel. Connect four, not on four people, but, four in a row. So that's actually pretty good for us. I should point out that this show does not represent the thoughts, intentions, plans, or strategies for world domination of our employers, ex-girlfriends, wives, belly button lint, or the militant wing of the Girl Guides. Still waiting for my t-shirt. It is solely our own personal opinions. We make no guarantees to the accuracy, validity, sobriety, relevance, and importance of anything we say or do here. My portion of this show has been brought to you by coffee. Coffee. How's it going? Let's try this again, shall we?
By this point, people have had that juddering sense of deja vu occur to them at least once or twice. Poor Pete. It's weird. This is kind of habit forming now.
Yeah. There's some guy named Pete out there going, "Hey, thanks, man."
I meant that we're recording with regularity for the first time since 2016. That's what I was referring to. But I think it was your brilliant idea to pretend that we're actually grown-ups and put it in calendar and not try and wedge it in around the rest of life, because it's gotten busy over the last a long time we've been doing this.
That is an understatement if I've ever heard one.
Wasn't an underhanded statement. That's usually what you provide. Just saying.
But the upside about having it planned out like this is, we get it done. We get it delivered. Instead of maybe on a weekend, maybe we can pull it together at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, that never ended well. Well, it was fun, but...
Yes. It made Monday mornings entertaining, that's for sure. So, security news, breaches... Cyber derp combo, some mailbag. Briefly in the road. I mean, it's the usual. You want to hear something that's really unusual?
Oh, would it be a band hammer or something else?
Would. In a big, ugly, finally kind of way. Everyone's president. That'd be President Biden. Has banned Kaspersky effective July 20th. So you have, at this point, less than a month to find a new antivirus vendor if you believe any of them actually do anything for you, other than install spyware crap that falls apart, breaks your system, requires that you walk around and visit 400 workstations with a floppy disk, and you're still waiting for your unified console.
Oh God, what was that? 2005 or earlier that they planned? No, it was 2003. They promised that.
2003.
Oh my God.
I'm still waiting. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Pink shirt guy really doesn't have that in him.
The gray in my beard belies the length of time.
Yeah, I should probably throw up a picture of you at that time right about now, like here.
Oh God, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the one hand, this is great news. On the other hand, it's taken an awfully long time because it's been a running supposition for a long time that Kaspersky was a bit of an oddball backdoor into systems. And when you consider the way that AV integrates with Windows, and has for 20 years, it's pretty much got, root level access to the whole damn shooting match. And that's kind of a weird thing to do, especially when you start looking at sort of the oligarchical connections that are going on. Kind of glad to see it gone. Real surprised it took this long. Makes me wonder what else is kind of on that short list of supply chain things that you may want to be paying attention to because you should have not bought them in the first place, and you may end up being forced to exit them. Do you have a backup plan for all of your major security applications and vendors? Like who's number 2 in line ready to rock?
Oddly enough, I don't think it's actually a security vendor that I'm just switching channels on you slightly here. The one thing that
I
I
see.
think that's going to be a bit of a battle is the potential for TikTok to get kicked to the curb, um, because U.S.
These
government wants
kids
to shut that one
today,
down. I know, right?
that does
Everything is a
explain their
soundbite.
attention span.
What's about my oh, look at the kitty.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah, I mean, it's sure. Let's use that example as something that's more tangible and focused for our listening audience, comprised primarily of.
Well, no, because the whole reason I brought that up is because of the potential security ramifications of it. But it's the other flip side of it is good luck trying to get teenagers to not use it.
Well, but they have YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. Those are the same things, aren't they?
Whatever happened to Vines?
Somebody bought them and then they went away.
Yes, the company
Oh,
formerly known
but
as.
also X exists still. If you have a need to get your neo-Nazi on,
Social media.
exactly.
So much fun.
But look at the bigger picture here. Like we've been waiting for CISA to do something about supply chain other than mandate that you have an SBOM. And by the way, the SBOM standard is a steaming pile of crap. One of my team is working on it, and he will not stop swearing on the having to look at and deal with that standard. So, you know, if we can't move that element of things along, um, and device provenance is still a big question because no tools really solve that yet. um, it does put us in a position where we don't really have a choice but to do these sort of blanket banhammer approaches because we can't do anything really fine grained here, I don't think.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting post that was done by Andy Ellis on his blog, CSO Andy, called "Drop the S Bomb," and he's quite opinionated on that particular subject. So that's worth a read. We'll have to stick that into the show notes.
Opinionated Andy? No, it doesn't sound right at all.
No, no, he's so mild mannered.
No, he's not, but he's very good at selecting wine.
And huge Patriots fan, so I don't have a problem with him there.
Speaking of deflating things, what's going on in jolly old England these days, Dave?
Well, in jolly old England, they're having a little bit of trouble. It seems that their computer systems there are bleeding out.
A spot of trouble,
A
Dave.
spot of trouble. Yes, a spot of trouble. Well, we don't want to talk about the blood trickling out of our eyeballs here. Apparently, stolen test data is a thing there. NHS has lost data for about 400 gigabits worth of data of private information that has turned up on the dark net. And is available for sale. Now, this particular data breach happened on June 3rd, and they were pretty quick to turn around and shut it all down. But unfortunately, by the time they did, the damage was already done. And this is one of
What
those things. Yeah, go ahead.
precision? 400 gigabits of data.
Did I do it again?
Yeah, you did it again.
I did. Oh, see, for those of you wondering about our deja vu jokes, this is our take 2 of this particular episode because the technology that we're using
They already
died.
know.
They
They,
already
they've
know that.
they've they've
But anyway,
seen parts from the previous one. It's all intercut together.
oh, you've done that already. I love
Yes.
the future. Did I win the lottery?
No.
Yeah. Anyway, suffices to say, this is the 400 gigabytes of data has been compromised and it's for sale, and it's affecting people at home. Their blood tests, their personal information. This is the kind of stuff that is really troublesome because we're seeing this more and more as attackers, and I use that term very specifically. Attackers are going after systems that really should not be targeted. Healthcare systems are a great example of this, because they're trying to turn a profit. And then you look at examples like back in 2021 when the University Hospital Dusseldorf was compromised
Oh,
using ransomware, and the attackers claimed that they thought it was a university, and they said big mistake. They gave the key over to decrypt the data, but unfortunately, the damage had it's already done at that point. Unfortunately, they had taken over enough systems that the hospital could no longer admit patients. And at that particular point in time, there was a woman that was in en route to in serious distress, and they had to reroute her to another hospital. And unfortunately, she died on the way. And they're like, "Oops, our bad." And to the German government's credit, they tried very, very hard to run these folks to ground and charge them with murder, but they just flat out couldn't find them.
Yeah.
And they I understand their motivation. I understand that they're trying to make money. I get that. I'm not sanctioning it, but I understand why they do it. But when they do it to vulnerable targets such as this, or organizations that are there to help the needy, this is where they cross that magic line for me, and I honestly think they should be, run down if possible.
Well, as somebody who is experiencing directly the costs of a cyber attack against, well, let's call it the underprepared, chronically, the city I live in, um, the breach story continues. So, City of Hamilton in Ontario, Canada, breach occurred February 25th. Information is still slowly leaking out. Um, the frustration that I have is the sheer amount of money that's involved. We're over 5 million now, of which 3 was spent on consulting alone. They brought in Deloitte because, Deloitte congratulated them on how great their breach response is, because the bad guys were only loose in their systems for about 20 days, and the average is 40. And so these are very sophisticated hackers who were able to, wait a minute, they
I
got in and got done in half the time as normal. That's not a story of a sophisticated attacker. That's a story of a shit system.
I honestly get a little bit vexed when I hear it was a sophisticated attacker or sophisticated attack. It's usually code for "please don't sue us," and it's one of those real frustrations because not just in this case, but I've seen this time and time again. If you do a quick search on Google News looking for articles with data breach and that, all of a sudden they're like popping up all over the place. And like where's the delineation? What's the definition of sophisticated? They figured out the password. That's the sophisticated, or I'm sorry, my sarcasm is
I,
overflowing.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of government, and you and I can both speak from personal experience. Yours
Mhm.
longer than mine, weirdly. Government doesn't actually pay that well. Like, you got to be in it for another reason other than the money, because it ain't the money. But at the same time, the amount of risk material involved is high. I mean, you and I, we kept watch on the power grid for less than we were worth at the time on the market by
Mhm.
not insubstantial amount of money. Um, More than a decade ago, the CISO job at a local university came up, and they're talking about you need to be CISO of a hospital, metallurgical science that has patents coming out the year, an entire university degree granting undergrads, masters, PhDs, a nuclear reactor that makes about 60% of the world's supply of iodine 125. It's used as a cancer treatment drug or cancer treatment radiotherapy. Um, you also had to teach class, and you had to have a PhD. And they were paying them the same rate that you and I made when we worked for the government.
Yep,
So
it's
would you do
patently
all of
absurd.
that money?
Hmm? No.
Would you do all of that for that money?
Oh
No.
my God, no, no.
And
But
and so you end up,
I
yeah,
do know
go.
people who have, like my former colleague Helen Patton. She used to do that for in Ohio, and like that's no small feat. When they have a football game, 80,000 people show up. So that's just one of the many things, the point of sale systems, all the rest of it that she had to take care of. And to be fair, under being in the U.S., they were compensated better than here in Canada. But yeah, there's no way I would do that job. And I remember when I saw that they required a PhD, I almost fell out of my chair. I was laughing so hard. I'm like, do you realize what you're looking for here? It's a
It's,
unicorn.
yeah. Um, and I suppose it shows up sort of that way in security that you and I've lived through. But I think in general IT, it's even worse. I mean, the city of Hamilton is notorious. We used to have a neo-Nazi IT department.
Hmm.
It's not a joke, by the way. That's an actual thing that occurred.
We should put
Um,
that. It was a CBC article. It
yeah,
should be.
yeah.
We'll add that to the notes as well.
Throw it in the notes. I think what's most important though is that information is just still dribbling out now about quite how bad it was, and it looks like they were just completely taken by from what I would perceive as a relatively simple ransomware encryption attack. They managed to snag an admin credential somehow, some way. I'm not saying that somebody clicked on shit, but probably somebody clicked on shit. Or an IT administrator who's a little full of themselves said, I'm tired of pushing the button on my YubiKey, and so I'm going to excuse myself from that. One of the findings is that very few systems in the city were actually MFA enabled.
Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah, I mean, given that it's effectively free, I mean, most cities are Microsoft shops, and Entra, that's just included. Like, it's just part of Active Directory, and we're using it. The library had all their MFA turned on. Super proud of them for that. But the list of systems that are still offline is intense. And these are a combination of unrecoverable and end of life, and so they're not going to bother trying to recover them systems. Um, Permit applications and licensing, fire department records management, asset management, public health inspection, traffic signals, museum collections, utility locates. Yeah, the spray painting on the ground that says "Don't shove the shovel through the gas line." Those things are out right now.
What could possibly go wrong?
Fire department paging and alert system. Facility management application, like when are we going to replace the roof on the building that needed its roof replaced? And then the
But
last one, point of sale systems. They can't even get their little freaking square reader up and running, for crying out loud.
what about? I'm sure they're still able to pay their employees, right?
No. Well, until this past week, they
Oh, they
did
finally figured
actually
that out.
manage to get their payroll system up and running again this week. The breach was
Wow.
in February.
I
They've
have a
been
few
paying
neighbors that
by
work for the city of Hamilton, and yeah, they were getting checks cut by hand for lump sums and not the full amount. It just absolutely staggering to watch this all unfold.
So here's what I'm thinking. They've now spent upwards of 3 million. They are estimating that they will need to spend 30 some million to get themselves out of this. Um, I'm and they're saying years, like until 2030 to fully recover. And I'm thinking, without even extending beyond the city I live in, it's about 600,000. The city you live in is about 200,000. They happen to be across the street from each other. So about an 800,000 person catchment area. I can probably find a team of 5 people who would volunteer evenings and weekends, and we could get all those systems knocked out, back up and running in a month, if that, because none of this is rocket science. It really isn't. And there's this thing that you and I experienced at the place we used to work, where there's a desire to make it complicated just because you can.
Oh
And it
yes,
doesn't have to be. It can be
I
really
remember
simple.
that. I remember that all too well. When they wanted to do rocket surgery on something that just needed a paper airplane, it's just like you only needed to do this, and here's a failover measure, and they're like, well, no, we have to put BGP for 2 buildings that are 20 kilometers apart. I'm like, no, no, you don't. I can feel the nightmares
Smart.
coming back. What was that?
But this isn't even like to the level of broken that day-to-day companies end up experiencing as a result, because there's a recent case of, we'll call it market capture, that's caused a bit of a market absence problem. Car dealers using the same software everywhere.
Yeah, and they've gone to the cloud for their data storage and software needs, but unfortunately, in this particular case, the provider for all of these car dealerships was popped. So CDK Global, unfortunately, came under a cyber attack, and not sophisticated this time. That was impacting all sorts of organizations like the Penske Auto Group and others. And this has really limited their ability to actually sell vehicles, which is absolutely staggering that it was this bad. Apparently, the attack happened on June 19th, and services were still affected on June 20th. I am still waiting to hear if those things are back up and running. I was really fortunate in that I had friends in the industry reach out and give me a heads up before this actually hit the wire that this was going on, and they explained it to me in darker terms, but I won't go into the depth there because I can't verify what they said, but I trust them implicitly. However, wow, it's one of those frustrations that I have when we talk about data breaches, that we've been talking about this for so bloody long. Like,
Mm-hmm.
remember back in 2012 on Liquidmatrix, I used to have a blog post there where I tracked various data breaches from that year, and the biggest one was 6.9 million records, and that was LinkedIn. Now, that's not to beat up on LinkedIn. It's just literally that was the biggest one of the day.
Yep.
Nowadays, if you say 6.9 million records, people are like, whatever.
Used to.
It's now orders of magnitude of billions of records, and it doesn't seem to be getting better at any point. I mean, there are all sorts of tools available in the market. There's all sorts of really good people that unfortunately are currently looking for jobs because AI apparently will save us all. We have to figure out. Oh, my sarcasm is dialed to 11 there. Uh,
Oh, good.
and it just is absolutely frustrating because it could be better. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we keep trying to get ahead of our skis, and it is going to constantly get us face plants like we've seen in the city of Hamilton, where things that honestly shouldn't have been as bad as they were will keep happening.
Oh yeah. And in no small part though, it's the security vendor industry is screwing up left, right, and center. So this is moving into the cyber derp section, by the way. Um, I'm a CISO. I get a lot of blind SDR cold calls. I've discovered, you may find this entertaining, the little badge on the phone icon on Apple iOS, it tops out at 25. After that, it says 25 plus. I thought it would go to 99 like everything else does. But no, 25 plus. Because I get SDR calls constantly. And I keep trying to puzzle out, did they just not understand who they're selling to? And then I realize, no, they have no idea who they're trying to sell to. I've got a whole team who works for me. My calendar looks like a losing game of Tetris. I'm busy all the time, like just all the time. I don't have time for a random phone call from them. It's like when your great aunt wants to chat and just calls you and expects that you're going to answer the phone, and she didn't text first to let you know. Like my outgoing voicemail message says, if you think it's worth my time, text me. Otherwise, don't bother leaving a recording. And that mailbox is full, and I leave it full. Like, I'm so frustrated. And it turns out this has been something that's been frustrating the industry for years. You go all the way back to 2015. John Masserini wrote an article, an open letter to security vendors. Then you get Mark Weatherford in 2018, 10 Rules for Cybersecurity Salespeople. You get Andy Ellis in 2017, Vendor Relief.
Yep.
You get Trisha Titus in 2020 with advice to cybersecurity companies selling to CISOs. And all of these advice columns say effectively the same thing: know your customer and don't go in with the pitch that your thing is going to fix whatever just broke.
Yeah, like for example,
Because,
build empathy. Don't just go in like, if you don't do this, you'll be on the front street. There's my fall down. The front page of the Wall Street Journal or whatever it happens to be. It's like, no, that's not what you lead with. You build that relationship and quite literally be the ambulance. Don't chase the bloody thing. You know what? You want to make sure you're building that trust with your customers, because otherwise you'll get us beating you about the head and neck with a salmon. And it's like funny because like you say, your calendar is like a game of Tetris. Mine looks more like a nice quilt at this point, but I'm fairly new into my role. But the really interesting thing was when you're talking about 25 plus, it's a little red balloon, right? So I just realized if it was 99, do 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 do, dad jokes all day long.
I'm going to go lie down now.
Yes, I broke him.
So at least 4 chunky articles there. I habitually respond when I'm really, really bored, which is like none of the time, I respond with Mark Weatherford's link to people who try to sell to me when they obviously don't get it. Just
Mhm.
respond with the link and say, "Have a
Okay,
read. We'll
wait a
talk
second.
after."
No, we should be fair because while there is a vast number of folks that are walking into door frames all the time because they can't get it right, there are ones out there that do get it right.
Yeah.
There is a gentleman named Patrick Kenny. He used to be a salesperson at Tripwire. I think he's currently at SailPoint. He is hands down one of the best salespeople I've ever worked with in my life. Another one is Greg Burns over at Akamai. Like those guys, they absolutely get it. And I have really been fortunate to work with people like them that understand and know how to build trust with their clients. So yes, while we like to beat them up, and trust me, I love beating them up, there are good ones, and we have to be fair and recognize them for the good work they actually do.
And something I tell the GTM go to market organization at work all the time is I have to support you guys because if you're not eating, I don't eat. Plain and simple. And so I don't mind supporting sales. What I mind is this um, blind, whacking at the pinata, hoping that you're going to get the candy to fall. If you're just getting slapped around by people with sticks, it's not enjoyable, and I don't want to really engage with you. So you're hurting your plan there by not following some pretty basic rules. Like you said, get to know me, get to understand what my problem space is. You come at me blind. Like I had somebody come at me blind and say, "Would I like a cloud security assessment from them?" It's like, yeah, nah, I'm good.
Oh God, sorry, you just reminded me of something I haven't thought about in years. At one point, a vulnerability scanning vendor who will remain nameless, I'm not actually even sure if they exist anymore, offered a free scan of our environment. And me being the complete pain in the backside that I am, I said, sure, here you go. And it was a Class B address space because I'm evil. They're like, yeah, sure, no problem. They went, they scanned, they send it to us, a great big thick document like this. And I start leafing through it. And I'm like, why they didn't just send me an email with a link to this, I'll never know. But they printed it out, hard copy. And I start flipping through it, and I'm like, Shenzhen, China. I'm like, here and here. I'm looking at this. I'm like, these are none of our IP addresses.
Did they miss
They
target?
they scanned the wrong block. They got it off by one of the octets and ended up scanning a Class B in China. It was the most amusing thing for me. They were absolutely beside themselves, but it was just absolutely staggering. They had the best intentions. I'll give them that, but it was wow. That was a face plant. I forgot about that one till right now.
We got a mailbag entry. Want to hear it?
Yes, I would love mail.
All right, I'm gonna lean over here to look at the screen.
Lean over.
Dearest, you can send your notes into mailbag@liquidmatrix.org. We would be happy to receive them. Dearest Liquid Matrix, it was so good to hear Jamie lose his ever loving mind last episode. Thanks. Dave
Won't that
alluded
be
to being
every episode?
cranky. Quiet. Dave alluded to being cranky during the brieflies. Can you please unmute him and let us all hear him lose his mind for this episode? Thanks. Love the entire internet.
So I've been very fortunate over the years to have lost my mind many times. Of all the things I've lost, I miss my mind the most. But there have been those moments where I have completely gone off script and jumped up and down and screamed and gone completely feral. But I'm actually happy now. I am, I've got a new job and I'm actually excited to get up and start the day in the morning. And it's a very weird experience for me. Like
Who
back
are
in
you?
November,
And
I know,
what have
right?
you done with the real Dave?
Well, just back in November, I walked out on stage to give a talk in Dublin, Ireland. And one of the first things I talked about was like, oh my God, I can't wait to retire. And I was like, I didn't realize I had said that out loud until I watched the replay. And I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But yeah, no, I was fundamentally done and I just didn't have the capacity to recognize it. So as much as I would love to rant because I've done it for many years, I'm actually happy and I don't have anything to completely rant about. Unless, of course, you wind me up or send me a cold call boiler room style.
All right. Well, I'm just going to say the amount of brand destruction you've just undertaken is a lot. Um, I don't know if you'll actually survive this, but Cool, I guess. On that note, maybe some brieflies?
Oh yeah, I'm just checking to make sure I had mine on. Yes, go for it.
And oh, I can't get that out of my head. Um,
That's a
so
twofer.
we spent a lot of time living in this virtual world, fooling around with computers. The largest piece of paper I have on my desk is 3 inches by 3 inches because post-it notes are real. Um, Sometimes fooling around in the real world is kind of cool. I would encourage you, especially the further you've gotten away from technology, to go play with some hardware. See where software defined radio has gotten lately. Tiny investment in hardware for an RTL SDR USB stick. And you can start doing things like figuring out which airplane is the one that's flying overhead right now, or figuring out how to replace that one remote control in your house that runs on 433 megahertz. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do, and doesn't take much. Might as well play.
True enough. And speaking of playing with hardware, I used to work at a company called AMD, and it was a really fun experience. My boss there she was absolutely lovely. I mean, you don't mess with her, you get the horns, but she was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, none of us work there anymore, but I do know a lot of the people that work there currently, and unfortunately, they suffered a rather significant data breach recently. And that employee info and customer information is apparently for sale on the darker side of the interwebs. This is not a good thing. I've had to deal with a data breach in my past, and there's nothing fun about it. So when you sit there tenting your fingers over your coffee, going, they must have made a mess. Not always. Sometimes it happens for the strangest reasons, and I really feel for them, and I really hope that they are having a better time than I think they are, or that I'm fairly certain they are, because this is not something I wish on anybody. I've lived through it. Luckily, mine was fairly minor, but it could have been so much worse. And this is those moments where you want to practice empathy. When you hear of a data breach, rather than calling them out and saying, "Hey, our wonderful widget can save you time and money," no, send them pizzas, send them breakfast, send them coffee. They may need it. They may need it.
It Number of breaches that I've been through, yes, every single one of them. Being a consultant for a long time, got a lot of that going on. Hey, there's the bell that says it's almost time to go.
Dang.
Upcoming appearances. Where can we see you, Dave?
I will be hanging about at summer camp, and I will actually be doing a speaking slot at Black Hat of all things. I'm just not sure where or what time, but that will be yet to be determined. And other than
Sponsors?
that, yeah, it's a sponsored one, so you can come throw tomatoes at me.
I will.
But it's sponsored one for a really cool sponsor, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But other than that, I will be start doing speaking engagements in the fall because that's when the silly season really kicks in for me. It's always spring or summer. Spring or fall,
Yep.
and that's when it'll really start rolling. Then, how about yourself? Where are you going to be?
I'm trapped somewhere between Google Workspace, Slack, Jira, Salesforce, GitHub, somewhere in that miasma, and I will eventually find my way out, I'm sure. Work for a European company. We're heading into summer, which means most of my coworkers are just going to piss off for like 4 or 5 weeks, and
Oh,
so
they
I got
do
a
it
bunch of
right
stuff.
over there.
Yeah. Um,
Go out, touch
One little
grass.
note before we get too much further along. We're gonna start tossing some guests into the mix. There's at least
Yes,
one
we
or
are.
two. Do you think we should try and do that as like an intercut segment, or do you want to give them the full torture?
Well, we were talking about this off camera, and I think that quite literally we need to do it differently. I think we need to get them to be co-hosts for an episode so that they can suffer along with us in its entirety. Because we could slice it and have them come in, or we could have them come in for this segment and then we punt them. And I'm like, it's too much work. Just make them do the whole thing. So it's really interesting because what happened was we had a friend from the industry who reached out and was interested in being on the show. And I was like, well, we've never had a guest before. And I thought about it. I'm like, but why? So we chewed
Because
on
this
that
used
one.
to be really complicated. It involved Skype recorder and moving, wave files around, and Jamie having to assemble them using. Oh yeah,
It
no.
was it was bad. It was really bad. Yeah.
It took
Now
four or
it's just
five
like click
hours.
next.
to assemble an episode. Now it takes like 20 minutes. So yeah, we should do that.
And we'll be bringing back a old school Liquidmatrix alumni for an episode too. So that'll be really cool because, strangely enough, I don't think most people realize this. We actually have quite a few alumni that were on the writing side of the house. So
Yep.
it'll be one of those folks that'll be joining us. So that is going to be fun as well.
I'm related to at least two of them.
That's true.
Conversation for another day. We got a little bit of advertising here. Going to throw out to Matt J's Vulnerable You. He's got about 12,000 ish subscribers. I think we're just over 100 now.
On YouTube, we now have over 100.
Okay, well, if you would like, subscribe, click the notification bell, drink your AG1, and PCB way.
Well, there's that, and there's also Brondo, the thirst mutilator. It's what plants crave.
This is true. All right, Matt's away right now with some sort of vacation, whatever that is.
Oh, wow.
So we don't have him to close off the show with the Secret Says. So I'm going to go digging in the archives. We have recorded over 130 episodes. Somewhere in there, I will find a fantastic recording of Matt and play that right now, along with an appropriately aged picture of Matt from when he was young and carefree.
Isn't that now?
Now.
Insert Seacrest comment here.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Catch you on the flip side. Cheers.
Have a great week.